Hello, and welcome to another Hearts of Iron 4 modding tutorial. This time we will be adding custom traits for our country leader and generals, as well as adding a new ideology and graphics. There are two kinds of traits in Hearts of Iron 4, country leader traits and unit leader traits. Country leader traits are defined under the common/country_leader folder. Here, under the leader_traits block, we see every trait that is used in the game for country leaders and advisors. To add your country leader traits, create a country leader folder under your mod's common folder. Then create a text file for your mod's traits and open it. Create a leader_traits block. Then create a block for your leader trait. If you do not want your leader trait to be available to randomly generated country leaders, then add the line random equals no. Then add the modifiers the trait gives to your nation. In this example, the leader trait will give a stability factor of 10% and a power gain factor of 5%. To add your trait to a character, find the character in the character files and then add a traits block to their country leader or advisor role. Then enter the ID of your trait. Create a localization file for your new trait and add the trait using the trait name as the localization key. When we load into the game, we can now see that our country leader has our new trait. Unit leader traits. Unit leader traits can be found under the game's common/unit_leader folder. If you open the file 00_traits.txt, you can find at the top of the file documentation on how to create leader traits and every option the trait can have. This is also documented in more detail on the Hearts of Iron 4 Wikipedia character modding page. Traits are highly customizable and offer many options. In this tutorial, we will create 3 unit leader traits based on the power armor technology we added in a previous tutorial. The first trait is a personality trait. The second is a trait that is earned by gaining experience. The third is a trait that can be purchased, but requires the previous trait to be unlocked first. Let's start by creating our own leader trait file. In your mod, create a unit_leader folder under the common folder. Then create a text file for your traits. Then open the file and add a leader_traits block. Now we will add the personality trait. Personality traits are the simplest trait. They can be added to any general, admiral, or operative, and can be used to give them different bonuses, penalties, or even just exist for flavor or to help in scripting. For example, using a personality trait to show which generals will side with one ideology in a civil war. To create the trait, first create a block for your trait with the trait ID as the block name. In this example, it will be power_armor_infantry_officer. Next, we need to define what type of character can use the trait. This allows for different traits that appear only on the appropriate character type, such as generals, admirals, or operatives. In this case, we want the trait to apply to both generals and field marshals. So, we will give the trait a type of land. A full list of trait types can be found on the Hearts of Iron 4 wiki. Next, we need to define what type of trait this is. As we want this to be a personality trait, we will add the line trait_type equals personality_trait. Other trait types include assignable traits, for traits that are unlockable by the player, basic terrain trait, for terrain-related traits that are unlocked by experience, and assignable terrain trait, for terrain-related traits that are unlocked by the player. Note that traits that are automatically unlocked by experience do not have a trait type. Next, we should add a new _commander_weight block. This block is used to randomize the chance that a new character created in the game will have this trait. Do this by creating the block, then adding inside a base chance. If you do not want the trait to be allowed for randomly generated characters, then set the base chance to 0. You can add modifier blocks to modify the chance based on different triggers, such as disabling the chance for this trait if the player does not have the DLC By Blood Alone, which adds the trait system to the game. Finally, we can add any bonuses or modifiers the trait gives. In this example, we will increase the character's attack and planning skill level by 1. Do this with the lines attack_skill equals 1 and planning_skill equals 1. Remember to add a localization string for your trait name and description in a localization file. To add a trait icon, create an icon as a DDS or TGA image file and place it in your mod's gfx/_/traits folder. This file should be 23 by 33 pixels. Then, create a GFX file in your mod's interface folder and add a sprite type definition for your trait. The name format for your trait icon must be gfx_trait_your trait name, where you enter the trait name exactly as it appears in the traits file. We can now assign the trait to one of our characters. Here, we have assigned it to our army general in the characters file for our custom nation. When we load into the game, we can now see that our general has the custom trait. Adding earnable unit traits. We can also add traits that are unlocked via experience or automatically based on specific conditions. An example of this is the infantry leader and infantry expert traits in the vanilla game. Let's add our own version of these traits that work for our power armor infantry. Let's start by making a trait that is gained automatically by experience when the general is commanding divisions that have at least 40% of their unit being power armor units. Create a block for the trait. In this case, we will call it power_armor_infantry_leader. Then add a type of core_commander. This marks this trait as a trait that only has its full effect when the character with the trait is an army general and not a field commander. Next, we will use a gain XP block. This block states how the experience required to unlock the trait is gained. This could be any trigger that works on an army leader scope. In this example, we will copy and edit the trigger used for the infantry leader trait. This trigger uses the use of variables and temporary variables. For now, what we are doing for this trigger is saving the number of units the general is commanding as a temporary variable, multiplying that variable by 0.4 to get how many units makes up 40% of all units under the general's command, getting the number of power armor infantry units under the general's command, then checking that the number of power armor units make up more than 40% of the total number of units under the general's command. We need to create a custom tooltip for this trigger. This will summarize the above in a single line of customizable text. Do this with the line custom_gain_xp_trigger_tooltip equals, then a localization key. In this case, it will be power_armor_infantry_ratio_over_40. Next, we need to add a cost. This cost is how much experience is required to be earned via gain XP for the trait to unlock. We will set this to be 1000. Next, we will add the modifier that the trait provides. We will make this trait give a 13% defense bonus to all power armor infantry units under this general. Add the line modifier army subunit power armor infantry defense factor equals 0.13. This trait works by providing the defense factor bonus only to units that match the name provided in the modifier. As our power armor's name in the code is power_armor_infantry, this bonus will only affect them. This bonus also needs to be defined in a file under the folder common/units/unit modifiers, and then within the subunit modifiers block. Next, we can provide an AI will do of 1, which means the AI will try to take this trait if available. Finally, we need to add a GUI row line. This line specifies what position the trait will have in the trait window in-game. The higher the number, the lower down the trait will be. If we reference the GUI row lines in the vanilla unit leader traits file, we can see that each one has a number after them, with 15 being the highest number used. As such, we want our new trait to appear at the bottom of the traits window in-game. We need to add a GUI row of 16. We have now done all we need to do for army generals to earn this trait in-game. Adding unlockable unit traits. Next, let's add an unlockable unit leader trait. This one will require power armor infantry leader to have been gained first, but then can be unlocked manually with experience points. Create a new block for this trait. We will call this one power armor infantry expert. Set it up with a core commander type, then create a gain XP block. This time, add the line always equals no to the gain XP block. This means that the block will never be able to automatically gain experience progression towards unlocking it. Next, add a cost, which is the cost in experience points to unlock the trait. Then, the modifier the trait will give you. This time we will add an attack factor of 10% to our power armor infantry. add an AI will do and GUI row that are the same as the previous trait. Next, we need to add the line trait type equals assignable trait. This tells the game that this trait can be manually unlocked by the player when the general has enough experience points. Finally, we need to connect this trait to the previous trait. To do so, add a any parent block, and inside the block, add the name of our previous trait, Power Armor Infantry Leader. To finish off these two traits, remember to add the graphics and localization for the traits using the same method we used for the Power Armor Officer trait. Now we can load into the game and see our two traits and their effects in the General's trait window. Adding ideologies. In Hearts of Iron 4, there are 4 main ideologies: democratic, fascist, communist, and non-aligned. These ideologies are defined in the file common/ideologies/00_ideologies.txt. Each ideology has a number of sub-ideologies known as types. These sub-ideologies are used when creating country leader characters but otherwise exist just for flavor and have no effect on the game. Instead, each ideology has a number of different options and rules that apply to it. They are all defined within the ideologies text file. This also means we can create our own custom ideologies and add them to the game. These work in the same way as the existing ideologies. However, when adding new ideologies, it is important to remember that every nation will need either a default name or flag to use, or an ideology-specific name and flag for this ideology. Without these, the nation will have no name and flag in-game when it is this ideology. Adding a new ideology. To add a new ideology, start by copying the vanilla ideologies file to our mod's ideologies folder. Scroll to the bottom of the file and add your new ideology. In this example, we will add monarchism as its own ideology. Then create a types block and add at least one sub-ideology type. In this example, it will be autocracy. Then we need to add a dynamic faction names block. This block is used by the AI when creating dynamic factions in order to have thematic faction names. In this block, enter a localization key that we will define later in a localization file. For example, faction_name_monarchism_1. Next, add the color of the ideology in a color block. This is the color used in the ideology pie chart and the ideology map mode. Add the color as its RGB values here. Finally, we can add the rules, modifiers, and other properties of this ideology. These options will customize what the ideology can and cannot do and how it will affect the AI. A full list of these options and descriptions of what they can do can be found on the Hearts of Iron 4 Wiki ideology page. There are 2 key blocks that can be added here. Rules, which is a block of various actions the ideology can do in-game. There are 3 required rules. Can force government, where the ideology can force a nation to change its ideology in a peace deal. Can puppet, which sets if the ideology is allowed to puppet nations in a peace deal. Can send volunteers, which sets if the ideology is allowed to send volunteers to nations at war. Next, there are modifiers, a block of country scope modifiers that affect countries with this ideology. For example, join faction tension, which is a modifier that modifies how much world tension is required for this ideology to be able to join factions when not at war. You can also add faction modifiers, which are modifiers that affect an entire faction if the faction leader has this ideology. Finally, we need to define an AI ideology. These could be either AI democratic, AI communist, AI fascism, or AI neutral. This value determines how the AI of a nation with this ideology will tend to behave. For example, we will add the line AI neutral equals yes. Ideology graphics. To add an icon for your ideology, create an icon that is 66 by 66 pixels and add it to your mod's gfx/interface/ideologies folder. Then create a .gfx file under your mod's interface folder and define a sprite type for your icon. The sprite type name should be gfx_ideology, your ideology's name _group. You can also add specific icons for sub-ideology types. To do so, use the name of the sub-ideology as defined in the types block and do not add _group to the end of it. Ideology flags. To add flags to your custom ideology, create a new flag and add it to the game's gfx/flags folder. The flag name should be your country tag, then the ideology name as defined in the ideology file. In this example, we have mfc_monarchism.tga. Ideology localization. Create a localization.yml file for your ideologies. For our new ideology, we will add a localization string for the ideology's adjective and noun. We also need to add a description. The adjective is the default name and shares its localization key with the name we defined in our ideologies file. Next, we add the ideology name's noun. This is done by adding _noun to the end of the localization key. Finally, we add a description to the ideology by adding _desc to the end of the localization key. In vanilla, this description is written as ideology-name regime. We also need to add the default name and description for any sub-ideology types we added. Let's do that now for autocracy. Finally, we need to define the localization for any faction name localization keys we defined in the dynamic faction names block. Add the localization key, then add a name. In this example, we will use a nested string for the adjective country name of the country that founded the alliance. This is represented by the text surrounded by the $sign. The text between the $sign is the nested string, and it draws from an internal localization variable that is set within the game. For more information, please see the localization page on the Hearts of Iron 4 wiki. Seeing it in-game. Let's set our custom nation to start the game with this ideology. To do so, open the country's history file. Then find the Set Politics block. Set the ruling party to be monarchism. This will change the starting ideology for the nation to be that ideology. We can also set the popularity of monarchism in the Set Popularities block. Add monarchism to the block and update the popularities so that the numbers add up to 100. We should also change the ideology of our starting leader to be the sub-ideology type we defined for monarchism. In this example, it will be autocracy. Save your changes and now start the game. As we load into the game as our custom nation and open the Politics tab, we can see our ideology is now monarchism, the political alignment pie chart has our ideology's color in it, and we can see our ideology's name, icon, and flag. That's all for today, and thank you for watching.